Yeah, you just forced me off. There was no intention of him to make that corner.
Yeah, understood, Max.
I need to get that back. I was ahead. He was never going to make that corner regardless of whether I was there or not.
Information. You have been given a 5-second time penalty.
Oh, that is lovely.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paddock Party podcast, an F1 podcast. I'm just rolling with the Paddock Party name now, and you're here with myself, Vincent, and we've got Mark and James. And today we're talking about the Saudi Arabian GP, Jeddah, the Jeddah Corniche. Is that what they call it?
Really?
Don't ask me why.
What does it mean? Go on then. You say it's all fancy and you know the name. What does it mean?
What does Jeddah Corniche?
2 seconds in, we're already Googling something.
James, you're supposed to come prepared with the answers to these questions.
Yeah.
Corniche comes from French and Italian, meaning coastal road, especially one along a cliff or ledge.
Well, there you go. It is pretty much on the ocean, so.
So we've got the very, very, very twisty, very narrow, very fast Saudi Arabian GP, which I think the stat is they do something like 70 or 80% of the lap at full throttle or something ridiculous like that, way more than any other track, apparently. And it definitely seemed to initially favour the McLarens, of course. And I think it was also interesting to see Verstappen's performance across the weekend, because this is a track that he really, really likes. And really, I feel a bit foolish for not having predicted that he would actually win the race last week, because I think there was definitely a chance that he could have. But anyway, getting into the practice sessions, what were your guys' main takeaways?
Gasly, quick.
Gasly very fast.
Gasly has got to be the world's most overqualified tractor driver.
What does that mean?
He can do amazing things with that car.
He just can't plow any soil.
Yeah.
I never said this was a working tractor. This is just a tractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gasly was impressive. That was an FP1, pretty warm as well. So that car must operate really well.
Yeah,
in the warm temperature.
Definitely. I think the other takeaway really from practice was that everyone wanted to make out with the walls at some point on the track.
Everyone.
It's standard, right? It's this narrow circuit. You're coming out.
I mean, it's...
No, but I feel like in Monaco, we never really see that many close brushes with the wall outside of the swimming pool section. But this one, they were just hitting everywhere, it felt like.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly that like Monaco is similarly narrow, but I think because Monaco is like so much of a slower track, and they're not spending so much of it at full throttle, that they just seem to, at Jeddah, I think it being so much full throttle, it's almost like it leads them to push that little bit harder as well, because they have to make the most out of that time that they're spending on the throttle. Maybe it's fatigue or a little bit of sort of a mental fade from having to be on it the whole time, but hard to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Canada, Montreal also have that wall of champions where it's not really that narrow, but somehow one of these corners is always going to catch you at?
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Except Jeddah seems to have a few corners they could catch you at.
Yeah, I think with Montreal and with Monaco, all the corners where people have trouble are those 90-degree corners, the really sharp ones, where they're not going super fast, but they are trying to thread the needle. They're trying to straighten out that hard 90-degree corner as much as they can, carry as much corner speed as they can. Whereas at Jeddah, I think because it flows so much more, they're just pushing really hard. They're always looking to the next corner.
It's very easy to take
before
that
they've
speed.
even apexed. Yeah.
There's no runoffs,
I think it is. Yeah.
There's a runoff on the 2 U-turn corners. I can't remember what numbers they are, but one at each end of the track are the only ones that really have any sort of runoff.
Yeah, Mark, one of the things you said before we came on was you didn't realize how many corners this track has. And I think it's because they just label things that probably shouldn't be individual corners as individual corners.
Exactly. It's just fast flowing mini little things, right? Little twist, little niggle, and it's into the wall.
Especially the back straights, the back sort of DRS sections, seemingly very much just contiguous flowing driving. So the end of Sector 2 through Sector 3.
Oh yeah, there's lots of little like janky corners is what I'm going to call it. But anyways, apart from Gasly in free practice, there was a FP2 had Norris and Piastri going 1-2.
Of course.
As you'd expect. And, FP1 shocker, but FP2 back to reality, I'd say. We had a red flag with Tsunoda in there.
Yep.
I think he got so unlucky.
Smashed.
Yeah, the one that was just unlucky enough to kiss the barrier a little bit too hard.
Yeah. That's the turn onto the straight, right? 27?
Yep. Last time.
Again, in that one, it was fairly straightforward. You saw, what did you guys make out of FP1, FP2, apart from Gasly?
I think for the most part, it was kind of either I felt like I had to take it with a big enough grain of salt that I wasn't that concerned with the result, or it was just, Lando Piastri 1 and 2. Yeah, okay, everyone's kind of driving to the times that we would kind of expect them to.
Yeah. Again, that would have been a cooler temperature. So bringing McLaren back, Gasly pushing differently because there's no heat. There's not as much heat, I think. I think the car just works better when it's warmer. Or maybe just everybody else's doesn't work as well. So
hard to tell. Still only a few races into the season. So, upgrades and stuff could mess with that.
Yeah, speaking of, did we have any call-out kind of upgrades?
Not that I heard about.
No? Okay. I thought there were a couple. McLaren had some revisions and stuff like that. But, James?
No, I couldn't think of anything. Nothing that stood out to me during the broadcasts, at least.
Yeah, they were minor. There were no big upgrades like in Bahrain where they brought new floors and whatever.
Imagine we will see probably everyone will bring their bigger upgrades to Imola because it's a well-known track and it is sort of a more, I guess, almost traditional kind of driving track. They'll be, they'll have lots of data and all that kind of stuff. Either Imola or Spain. Spain are where they'll bring lots of upgrades.
Yeah, you'd think Spain would be possibly, but that's what 4 races away, halfway through, more or less. No, bit.
Not that far away. We've got Spain on the 30th to the 1st of June. It's really only a month away.
There you go. Time flies. We just finished, so this is a 3-part. What's it called? A triple header. We're just done with that.
Later, yeah.
Which is good. Okay.
Got a bit of a gap.
Next week, though. There's not much of a gap.
That's only because I'm only saying a gap, but, we're recording this late, so...
Yeah, we're recording this at the appropriate time for us.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so FP3, there was no real standards. I just watched the practice in highlights. That's how I went about it. And Jeddah is the worst time zone to do anything. So you only have, for me, it's all after the fact. I couldn't watch it live. If the race starts at about 11, 12, I'm okay to watch it live. I'm going to stay up and watch it, which is good.
Well, the Miami one starts at 6 in the morning, so...
That's perfectly fine. Go late to work. Actually, it'll be go early to work because straight from there, just into the train, into the city. So if I need to. So Mondays, I do work from home, so... Segue. Yeah, FP3, again, there was only point, I believe, between Norris and Piastri. Norris leading in FP3.
Which, again, I think is, like I said before, is to be expected. He's got more experience at the Jeddah track and was, at that point, still leading the championship. So you'd expect him to be fastest. But, yes, that all changed, didn't it?
Well, did it?
Yeah, and with that, we'll segue into Quali.
Yay!
Yay! Look at that. Beautifully laid out and then butchered by myself. So, Q1, nothing really surprising to report there. The usual expecteds, I guess, out in Q1. Lance Stroll, Jack Doohan, Hulkenberg, Ocon, and Bortoleto. I didn't expect Max to be on top. for Q1, but he did surprisingly well, just sort of putting himself out there to say he's still got the pace, even though that Red Bull seems to be lacking a bit of it recently. I mean, apart from that, pretty stock standard Q1.
As soon as I started watching Quali, like watching through the whole Quali, I was like, oh yeah, Max really, really likes this track. He's always been quick at this track, even with the dominant car. Of course, he's going to somehow pull it out for Quali, even though he's struggling with the car.
Yeah,
so,
Max is going to do
yeah.
Max things.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, Max performs well anyways, given that whichever track he does have a bias to it, some tracks, as do all drivers. But where did Piastri and Sainz, and not Sainz, but Q2? Because that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about Q2, where he did go well.
Yep. I think they were still up there. I think Norris was still... so Norris finished first, 127.48 in Q2.
Yeah.
With Max, Piastri, and Russell all within a 10th behind him. So it was
Russell did well, correct? I remember that.
He had a great quali, to be fair. So yeah, it was still really, really tight, even in Q.
Yeah. And then again over there, what else? Nothing else happened on tour. There were no red flags, nothing unexpected apart from what Albon went out, Lawson in 12th this time. Still not got, you'd say, a handle on top of Isaac Hajar. Would you, even though he qualified on top of him?
I would say so. I think I saw an article earlier today saying, Liam Lawson is a changed man after, just spending 2 weekends working for the main Red Bull team. And he's obviously struggled to readapt to the Racing Bull. And I saw this point made about Ricciardo as well in kind of the same context, and I thought it was actually pretty apt, and I hadn't thought of it in this way, in that when Ricciardo did his stint at McLaren and struggled so much to adapt to that car, he probably unlearned a lot of what made him such a great driver, in that it might have undone some of his natural instinctive driving style. And so that might have been a contributor to why we saw Ricciardo basically get the yips and not recover. And it's quite possible that even just the short stint in that Red Bull, it's crushed enough of Lawson's confidence and may have even, pushed him to really try and adapt in a way that went really counter to his instincts, to his natural style. And that could be a lingering effect while he's at Racing Bulls. If they keep him in the team, we might see him suddenly shoot up in performance by the mid-season break or something, if he can get his confidence back and get into a place where hopefully, this car suits him a bit better. He does seem to be doing better. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how he actually does.
Yeah. The other two that went out were Ollie Behrman, I guess. I did say, let's just recap it anyways. We had Albon, Lawson, Alonso, Hajar, and Behrman. That went out in Q2.
Still getting the best of Ocon.
Yeah.
As a rookie.
Yeah. There's a lot of positive things for that guy. And Lance Stroll continues to set records every race now.
Yeah.
What was his record? Like most Q3 appearance?
Exits?
Like
Most Q1 exits.
Q1 exits.
Yeah.
Q1 exits.
Boy.
He's a record setter. You can't take that away from him.
Keep on seeing all of these, rumor articles about Max going to Aston Martin.
Oh, that's a different segment altogether there.
Yeah.
I keep seeing Honda apparently is trying to push to get some say in which drivers they use as well. So definitely a lot of pressure going to be on Stroll when 2026, 2027 rolls around. Interesting to see how that goes.
Maybe we can reserve 5 minutes to pick where we think Max is going to be in 26 or 27.
5 minutes is going to be long enough.
Well, I'll figure it out. And then Q3. What happened in there? What was the most interesting thing that happened in Q3?
I mean...
Gee, I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should just move on to the race. No, I mean, silly stuff aside, Lando crashing out was probably the only really surprising thing in that qualifying session. Everything else, I mean, Lewis was a little lower. Carlos Sainz getting the better of Hamilton in a Williams was probably a bit of a surprise, but I guess completely not unexpected at this point. I think the other surprise was that Gasly was there.
Yeah, I think it showed that that FP1 pace was legitimate, and that Gasly doing it again, make it into Q3 in that Alpine, which is presumably also a tractor. Yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, to be fair, in Q1, there's only 300th of a second between Gasly and Doohan. All right, so it's not like a typical Max is 1.2 ahead of Tsunoda kind of deal, right?
No, true.
Sure.
The margins these days are getting much smaller, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Between some of the teammates, but
Yuki's still like 1 second off almost. But this is Max we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Q2, he was pretty much, I think, a second away from Max every quali. But, no. Yeah, pretty much. Yep. Look at them.
Yeah, I was looking at Russell and Antonelli and the gaps between the teammates. They've been pretty consistent. There's not much of a difference. Obviously, somebody's got a little bit of a better handle on a particular track. They're more comfortable. And therefore, it's consistent. There's no one, I shouldn't say sandbagging, no one underperforming or anything else. It's just the Red Bull. It's just the biggest gap between teammates.
Yep. I mean, it's consistent at least. It's not just. It's very much it's a weird way to put it, right? It's not a problem per se because it's Max is causing this gap. They've put 4 drivers also in that seat over the last few years, and every single one of them, except for Ricciardo, has been extremely far behind Max on more occasions than not. So it's I think it's very telling of Max is just that good, not his teammates are bad drivers necessarily.
Yeah, agreed.
I think a lot's been said at this point as well about the fact that Verstappen likes such a pointy car, front biased car, that it's just completely outside of any other driver's natural style, natural feel, that I think a lot of excuses have been made for his teammates because of that. A lot has been said about it to, I guess, try and be like, look, yes, we kicked Lawson out after 2 races, but it's not his fault.
Yeah.
Lando crashing out, I thought it was a bit of a weird accident because he was pushing so hard that he hit one of the curbs, one of the low curbs, so not one of the tall ones, and the car seemed to get completely upset. Like, it just seemed like he had no control over the car at all because he was pushing it so hard. It's like he'd just gone completely beyond his own limits to drive the car.
Yeah.
The more time that passes, the more I am of the feeling that he's just not going to get a World Drivers' Championship. And I think if Piastri... Yeah. Well, I think if Piastri can do it this year, that might actually shatter Lando's confidence.
Yeah.
It could be a career ender.
I saw this video where some of these artists were ranking which drivers which house in Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I thought that was perfect. And they said Lando was a Hufflepuff. He is such a Hufflepuff. He's, what else can I say? He's too nice. I've said it last time that he's just too self-deprecating for his own good. He doesn't have that edge. Right? I remember thinking back when Rosberg and Hamilton were going at it. Rosberg said, I had to find every bit of edge in order to be able to beat and compete with Hamilton. And that's what you need. You can't do it if you don't have that edge. And Lando at this stage for me is falling short. So I believe the reason he pushed that hard was because he knew Max would have beaten him, because Max would have. And I don't think he necessarily thought that Oscar would have. I think he knew that he had Oscar's number, so he wasn't worried about Oscar. It was Max that was pushing him forward. So yeah, the lap itself between Oscar and Max was, there's a sizable gap there when you think about it. that being said, it's only like what 1/10, really,
1/100th
100th
at the end.
Yeah, that's nothing.
It's like you can't even blink that far.
Yeah, but
It's such a tiny amount.
Look at Russell as well. Russell was like 100th off as well. He was there or thereabouts. So very impressive on his front.
Watching it right at the end of Quali, it was like Russell did a great lap, had pole, then they went around again. Piastri put up a lap on pole. Max put up his lap and Russell came in, I think might have been before Piastri, and improved again. So the three of them were all really, really close up there.
Yeah. Kimi Antonelli, good lap as well.
In 5th as a rookie at this track. Crazy.
My pick for P3. So he did fade, unfortunately. But anyways.
Well, I mean, to be fair, both of the Mercedes died off towards the end of the race. But again,
Speaking
a lovely
of the
little
race,
segue into the race.
Look at us do
we need a jingle between each.
Just me making a shit segue.
James is tired. He's hitting the button that says next section, next section.
Next.
Yep, fast forward.
Is this emblematic of how exciting this race was?
Yes. I mean, we have to talk about the incident that was the whole cause of any drama in this race, and that was Max getting his 5-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage.
Yeah. I think we can all agree here that it was a slam dunk.
Yep. To be fair, I kind of agree with the way that the stewards gave him the penalty rather than giving him the usual 10 seconds. They gave him the 5. Very specifically because they said it was first lap incident.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great way to do it. You still have to penalise the drivers for doing cheeky shit like this, but giving them a 10-second feels too harsh.
The time he pulled this shit off with Hamilton, and I think it was Ocon that got in between them.
I mean, just anyone who races Max has felt this.
Specifically at Jeddah, he's done this before, right? Hamilton got in front, and it was much, much, much more clean, right? Hamilton had like a whole car in front of him. Max braked late, was no chance of making the corner. Hamilton made the corner, but it was compromised. Ocon gets in front. Ocon then is overtaken by Max, who cut the corner. Michael Massey gets on the phone. He's like, "Hey, just letting you know that, I need you to give that place back or else we'll give you a penalty. Please get behind both Ocon and Hamilton." I'm like, that's not how you do penalties here, buddy. I don't have
that used to be the way that they would do it.
Well, what?
They realize that the teams just don't care, especially in a situation like Max Verstappen where he could pull a 5-second gap like there's no...
Exactly. And I think it's important that they find the right way to penalize him, right?
Well, not just him, just any driver that can get a very large advantage and basically can ignore penalties.
Him is emblematic of any driver, yes. I think that getting the penalty system correct, and I don't like penalties. I think penalties kind of are a waste of time. They ruin... We want to see these passes happen on track, not off. So from that point of view, I don't enjoy it, but you need a way to level the field. Otherwise, Max is going to pull that same maneuver every single time, put his hands up and says, "Hey, that was lovely," right? Like whatever he said on the radio broadcast. So stuff like that. Max is going to race like that no matter what. Right?
He's just like a Schumacher or a Senna or any of those kind of drivers where if you give him an inch, he will take a mile and then he will go 30 seconds down the track ahead of you with it. He will crash into you if it serves his World Drivers' Championship, like Monza or Schumacher on Damon Hill. It's not admirable, it's not honorable, but
it shows the drive, how far
that's the drive. Yeah.
Question on that first lap incident. If it was Lando, what would have happened? Instead of
going off the track.
Instead of Piastri.
Between him and Max, what would have happened?
Yeah.
That's a tough one because Piastri had him. So I think it only would have been different if maybe Lando was that little bit further behind, maybe didn't get quite as good of a launch as Piastri did. It would have been probably different between Piastri and Lando, because Lando probably would have just driven into Max, whereas Piastri probably would have braked that little bit more, let Max get through and chased him down.
Okay. I think we've lost James.
We have James's internet has perished. No, there he is.
There you go. I'm back.
I tend to disagree. I think that, well, you did say he would crash. I
Maybe.
would say it's hard, right?
I think if he got the same launch that Piastri did, I think it would have unfolded in exactly the same way.
I would think there'd be contact.
You reckon?
I reckon.
Because Piastri did take a lot of the track width, and Max just didn't brake or let off the brakes and just went off through to cut the corner. So I think if Lando was the same distance alongside, I mean, I don't know. It's so hard to decide. You know, if he was 1% later on the brakes, then maybe there'd be contact, or you know, 0.5% or 0.1%. I think that's where, you know, decades past, Formula One was always about that last 1/10 of a second of performance. I think it's even less than that now, especially when it comes to talking about what ifs like this.
Yeah.
All I can go on.
I was going to say that the reason I think that is composure, right? I watched Piastri's composure there. He said, I think on that lap, he said, he needs to give that back. I was ahead, and then didn't talk about it anymore.
I think
right?
if the outcome had been the same, if it was Lando in that position, then the outcome would have been the same. Like, you know, same launch, same just a little bit of outbraking of Max. Max dove off the track. I think that outcome could have been exactly the same with Lando, but he would have been a lot sadder about it on the radio. Like, a lot.
I think Max has just got Lando cooked. He's got him in his shadow. He doesn't have to worry about him. Lando will cause himself.
Ever since Austria last year, I think it was.
Yep.
When they had contact and were battling so hard, and Lando just didn't seem to be able to hack getting pushed that hard by Max.
Correct.
In the end.
That's why. That's why I think it wouldn't have been the same. The way Piastri hung Verstappen out to dry, and he did the right thing by himself, 100% within the rules. Yeah. Not sure about Lando these days. I mean, I love Lando. I love Lando's outside of racing personality, and on track as well. I do like him. He's very clean, pretty much too nice, and doesn't have that edge.
Doesn't have like drive, that like viciousness to him that I feel like Piastri does. It's not a very like in your face viciousness from Piastri. It's a very quiet, calm, collected, like, will push things as far as he needs to get what he needs, sort of thing.
Not to blow too much smoke up Piastri's butt, but it's definitely the same kind. It's definitely the same kind of just absolute stoic, but stoic, you know, outward personality that Schumacher had. But then on track, Schumacher was daggers out. You know, he, just like Max, give him an inch, he's going to take that mile and run with it. He will crash you out of the race if he has to. And I think Oscar is displaying some of that similar kind of, you know, gentle, calm persona, but with that edge, that ability to push right up to the limit and then stop where he knows the limit is.
Yeah. I guess once that happened, that was kind of a downer for Max. Oscar was able to keep up, more or less. He was complaining of tire problems through that first stint, but these tires, man, they just don't like the warm air behind them. They don't like the following heat. Max couldn't get away, right? And that kind of sealed the race for him. He was definitely not going to be able to easily get past Oscar. I think there was some commentary around who had the better car after the fact, whether it was the Red Bull. And I think Lando kind of said that maybe the Red Bull was the better car.
When Oscar was asked, he just turned around and said, yeah, 100% our car is better. We have the car behind us. It's the only reason why I'm able to win races. I'm a good driver, but I need a good car to get the actual win. And I think that difference in attitude just shows through again, right?
Yeah. I mean, it circles back to that same thing. James, any other takes on that first lap?
Not really. I mean, it was kind of disappointing moving on from Max and Piastri to see Yuki and Gasly coming together. They seem to have a really good run through a few corners, some really nice wheel-to-wheel racing. And then it just happened, I think, Yuki, I can't remember, Yuki got a little bit out of sorts.
Turn 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, going over the curb and just bonked himself into Gasly and unfortunately took both of them out of the race. It's a real shame to see because it would have been nice to see Gasly up there fighting for some of the points positions just to, throw a wrench in the works for all the top teams. But yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. Like when I was watching it and then went back and watched a replay of it, I think it was definitely like no one is to blame out of the two of them. It was just a racing incident, in that sort of first lap chaos. Yuki was just that little bit too far over to the right, didn't quite brake as hard as he potentially could have, or turn in potentially as hard as he could have, but he was still quite close to the barrier. And then Gasly turned in that little bit more than he potentially needed to, and just that little bit of a tyre touch. And the damage to their cars was relatively small as well. Gasly wasn't able to get moving again, but from what I saw, his car was all in one piece. His rear wing was probably cracked. The carbon fiber and stuff like that did a huge wobble jiggle as it hit the wall, but it might have broken the rear axle or done some damage to the gearbox or something like that from the impact, which is why he wasn't able to get moving. Tsunoda, I meant to look up why he couldn't actually continue because I didn't catch why. Did you guys find out?
No, I just think it was just too much damage.
Yeah, I think he damaged the rear wing, which I think at this point teams need to start making changeable as much as they do the front wings, because there has been so many incidents recently where someone's just tapped the wall with the back, just lodged the rear wing, and then had to call it. So it's a real shame to see, but yeah.
I wonder if that's a regulation thing. It probably is.
It's a lot more electronics in the rear wing than there is in the front.
It might be because DRS.
It's more complicated.
True.
And just pull the nose cone off, stick the nose cone on, tighten a couple of bolts, off you go.
Yep.
The other thing that also happened on that first lap was Kimi Antonelli giving the place back to Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, and I think Hadjar also gave a place back to someone. I can't remember who it was, but basically near carbon copies of what happened to Max. Both of them ran wide, and both of the rookies ended up giving back those places. So even more, I guess you'd say, damning in terms of how the rest of the drivers would have viewed a situation like that.
Yeah. I think from there, apart from that basically brought Jeddah's record of safety cars on every race out again.
So, yep, still going.
So that happened. And then from there, we get to lap 20. The race is kind of pretty much running in race order effectively till the pit stops. I guess that's where Max had to serve his 5-second penalty, or would have had to, because they pulled Piastri in and he got the undercut.
Yep. Comfortably, because Russell came in, I think it was Piastri lap 20, Russell was 21, and then Verstappen came in 22. So definitely I think there was the undercut. Max's penalty, I think his 5-second penalty, was actually the decider there. It's possible that Piastri would have been able to catch up to Max and overtake him, but I think that extra 5 seconds in the pit lane just cinched it.
Yeah, definitely. Made it that bit easier, because Piastri probably could have tried to catch up to him, but then he would have had to deal with, higher tyre wear, being in the dirty air. The McLaren does seem quite sensitive to dirty air because he has complained about it a few times. So it is very possible that, Max might have been able to hold him behind, but we'll never know, really.
I think they're all sensitive to dirty air, and that's the problem. I think even Hamilton, who's been slow, was able to manage winning the sprint race because he didn't have dirty air. Everyone else did. So whatever's going on behind the cars, and these cars were supposed to be, and we did see it at the start, where everybody was able to overtake and, get close to each other because of the ground effect. Now the tires are so responsive to dirty air, it's near impossible to have a good race where people are, unless there's deg, if there's massive degradation like in Bahrain, then you're going to get interesting races.
Yeah.
Mm.
Unfortunately, if
I
it's not
remember
one thing, it's another with these cars.
Yeah, I remember we had a lot of discussions about this when the reg change came in, because we noticed that while the cars were all able to follow much, much closer together, you didn't have as much of that, a car disappearing 30 seconds down the track or cars being lapped. That was happening less often because they were able to follow each other. Didn't necessarily lead at pretty much all tracks to more overtakes necessarily, but it's definitely getting worse with each subsequent year.
Well, thank God they're changing the regs again. We'll have something
We'll
different.
see.
Yeah, they're going to be so much better, but let's not talk about that now because we'll be here for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
Definitely have to make that a topic.
James keeping us on point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think something else that was interesting right before the pit stops happened was, and again, just going back to that attitude difference with Lando and Piastri. Lando battled up a few places to get behind Hamilton, and then I think 2 or 3 laps in a row, he overtook Hamilton before the DRS line at the front straight, and then Hamilton just DRS straight past him. And that happened with him and someone else last year, didn't it? I think it was him and Max. He just doesn't... I think he's one of those guys who's a really great driver, but not a great thinking driver. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I think he just drives the car and doesn't think about the strategy so much. I don't know. Because, then you've got, his missed win at Russia because he wouldn't come in to put intermediates on when the rain started. There's just this pattern emerging, I think, of, and I'm really bashing Lando tonight, but he just doesn't seem to be able to get out of his own head when he's driving. He can drive, but he can't do the strategy for himself at the same time, like your Leclerc's and your Max's and Russell making his own omniscient, seemingly, strategy calls and stuff like that.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put so much of the onus on Lando for that. He was racing Hamilton, who has done this to multiple drivers on multiple occasions. So it may not necessarily be that Lando was lacking in the strategy department. It may just be that Hamilton played him, essentially, made sure that, oh, no, you overtook me into the final corner. What a shame, sort of thing. I'm sure that had a hand in it as well. And maybe Lando was just confident enough in the car's straight line speed that he didn't care. And he just played into the game. He was desperate to get up into podium positions, which eventually he obviously did. But, it's just that impatience got the better of him 2 laps in a row.
Norris didn't get podium position.
Kind of funny.
Didn't he? What am I thinking?
He got close.
My brain is all over the place today.
It's getting close to bedtime, James. So we know. We got you. We got you.
So, not too long after all the pit stops and stuff like that, there was the funny incident of Bortoleto almost taking Alonso out. I forget who he was trying to get past. I think it might have been Behrman. And he just juked to the right as Alonso decided to dive right up the right-hand side of the track, and it was close. I think they actually did touch.
I was gonna say, and I'm pretty sure Alonso touched the wall as well. I did like Alonso's Kimi.
Whoa.
And always fun to point out that technically Alonso is Bortoleto's manager as well. So trying to take out your manager on the racetrack is obviously not the most impressive look to have.
Smartest thing to do, yeah.
Yep.
Apparently sharing a plane home as well after the race.
I think Alonso joked at one point that he just wasn't going to get dinner on the plane or something like that.
The other thing that was interesting was actually Charles went long. The only person that went longer was Lando. Charles went long, and that kind of set him up for his P3. So I think Lando, in what you just said there, Vince, where he got held up by Hamilton, could have actually made the move over Charles had he pulled off the pass 2 laps earlier. So it's things like that, they add up, and then we'll get to a point where you can't do much else now. It's too late. Somebody's got too much of a lead, and they've got too much confidence to kind of let anything else happen.
I think we saw that tyre difference with Antonelli and Russell as well, where Merck had just kind of done, I guess, a bit of a bog standard strategy. There was nothing wrong with their tyre strategy necessarily, but it just ended up that they were worse on their tyres, and both Russell and Antonelli went backwards.
Yeah, just no imagination. Whatever is normal, we'll go with it. Yeah, the Mercs just couldn't get their tyres all the way to the end of the race.
Well, they pitted earliest, right? Like lap 19 was Kimi's first stop, and then 20 was George. Speaking of continuing that conversation about the tires, right? The same offset, lap 21, when Oscar had to take. So I think the Lando incident was lap 13, 14, 15, early in the race with Hamilton. Lap 21, after new tires, Oscar made a pass in one go over Hamilton. Didn't have any issues to basically get through. Obviously, the tire differential was there, but it's one more of those things that, you keep watching these races and you go, well, what's happening here, right? Like, Lando, you can't let people box you in like this. He did this even at Bahrain, where he screwed his race for about 3 laps and he didn't get George. So I know we keep stabbing Lando in the back on these calls, but it's
We're not biased towards Piastri at all.
I mean, I also feel like Lewis is smart enough to know that his race was not with Oscar. So I feel if Hamilton really wanted to, he could have put up a fight and made it a real challenge for Piastri to get past him, even though, the McLaren is obviously quite a bit faster than the Ferrari at the moment. But I still feel that, Hamilton is in the right headspace to be like, yep, I'm not fighting Piastri. There's no point in wasting my time and my tyres trying to defend a position that I'm going to lose anyway.
Well, I think
quite possible. It's quite possible that the team got on the radio and told Hamilton, "Hey, Piastri's coming up behind you with brand new hards."
That's giving Ferrari strategists too much credit, that one.
I don't think Hamilton would have had a chance anyways. I think I'm more in line with what James was thinking. Hamilton knew that he was not going to race him. Best to let him get past and go and not waste time and energy on keeping that position. It wouldn't have served any purpose. What else went on apart from those things? Where we at? We're like halfway through the race now.
Call it lap 30 or 40 or something like that for all the difference it makes, I think.
Yeah, I think it was lap 30-ish. Everyone had kind of done all of their pit stops. I think the last person to do it was Lando or Isaac. Actually, no. It was Lance Stroll, last person to pit. Not that it made much difference to his race, I'm sure.
He paid for all of the tyres. He's going to use them.
Yep, and straight.
1 lap down, finished in 16th. Jeez. Anyways, what else? I think Lando didn't actually have a chance. I mean, we're getting towards the end of the race over here, right? McLaren had the race in the bag with Oscar. Max chasing behind. Lando comes up against Charles. Did not ever get into DRS. Safe to say that the tire differential and I believe Ferrari has slightly superior straight line speed over the McLarens. Meant that at no point did Lando actually get into Charles's DRS zone.
I would like to point out as well, before we move too far from it, Piastri was never what I would say in a position to truly say this race is his. Max did pretty much stay within 5 seconds of Oscar for the entirety of the race after the pit stop. He was never, I'd say, truly out of it. I think whether that is that, Max was pushing hard and Piastri was managing it, or both of them were pushing extremely hard, it was good to see that, much as we do enjoy Oscar, like, he didn't just run away with it. It still felt like, if Piastri made a mistake, Max would have come up right behind him or taken the place from him. It was never like 30 seconds down the road, can do what I want. No one's going to challenge me for this win.
Yeah, I think after the pit stops, Max was 4.5 seconds behind Piastri. So, the 5 second penalty did its job there. And then Max reduced it, I think, to at the smallest gap, about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, something like that. Never got any closer than that, but it was still close enough that 100% if Piastri made any mistake, Max was going to be there. No doubt.
Yeah, I think that, look, Agreed. I don't think Piastri was pushing his limits. He didn't need to. And he knew enough to stay in front was good enough. It was not going to be an easy pass. At no point did Max actually threaten him or show any intent of being able to threaten him, again, by getting into DRS. So, does he have to win by 30 seconds? No.
But it is nicer to see that he's not winning by 30 seconds. I think it's much unhealthier for the sport if, like Max during his dominant period, no one had any question as to where that race was going every time.
Yeah,
nowadays, at least, it's like, okay, like I said, just because he didn't win by 30 seconds doesn't mean he wasn't always going to win. But it does mean that if Piastri makes a mistake, which he may do if Max is pushing him hard enough, that the race switches up again. Whereas previously, not that Max ever made mistakes when he was 30, 40 seconds up the road, but if he ever did, he really wouldn't change the outcome of the race unless he crashed.
I mean, you just got to point to Hamilton winning Silverstone on 3 wheels.
Exactly.
To show how bad dominance can be.
Yeah. Lose a wheel halfway around the track, still finished first by like 15 seconds, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. This year has not been one where any one of those teams has just dominated, right? Like, even at the end of this race, Charles was 8 seconds behind. That's not that much, right?
Compared to previous years, definitely not. 8 seconds is obviously a lot in Formula One, but compared to previous years, it's so much closer, and I feel like the sport is much healthier for it.
Yeah, I think so too. I enjoyed it for that one reason. No one's skating away that easily. Yeah, so at the end of it, I guess did you guys watch the end of it? Let's ask that question. I know you did. So did you watch the post-race celebrations?
Are we talking about the cool-down room?
Or even before that?
Oh, I don't think I did.
Did, but I don't know if I know what Mark's referencing.
So,
No.
the Ben Suleiman basically walks up and has a chat with Max.
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
It's a bit curt over there, that conversation. You could see real frustration in Max's face.
I don't blame him. He's perfectly within his rights to be annoyed by the penalty. I just get frustrated that what's been MBS decided that he needed to come and talk to Max. It's like, why the fuck do you need to talk to him? Stewards have made a decision. You don't need to apologize for it. Fucking get out of there.
You think he'd apologize?
I have a feeling that's why else would he go over there and talk? I don't know if it's an apology, but he's trying to placate Max or whatever he may be doing. It's like, you don't need to do that. Your job is the president of the FIA, not the driver's counselor.
True. I enjoyed the cool down room where there was like Max just
in his corner, just angry, and then Piastri and Leclerc just having a fun chat about everything that happened.
Like all of their reactions to Alonso almost getting taken out. That was quite funny.
Max did show some emotion outside of anger when that happened.
Jeez. I think the race overall was quite exciting because it was close. A little bit of a boring, like there was not a lot of activity. There was activity, but nothing that I'd say these race directors didn't know what to put on the television, that kind of thing. So
I feel it was a bit better this time around. It didn't feel as egregious as the last couple races in terms of missing a lot of on-track action or not getting timing screens for multiple laps at a time. I think they've done a bit better, whether they've replaced someone or finally gotten their act together or they've figured out all the technical issues that were causing them problems last few races. Yeah, I don't know, but it certainly felt a bit better.
Yeah. That takes us to the end, which basically meant we know Piastri wins, Max in second, and Ferrari, Charles, gets a podium.
Getting a third.
Yeah, go Charles.
Teaches me a lesson for not picking a Ferrari driver to come third and hoping that Kimi Antonelli or some other random gets a position just to be different. Anyways, I was super pumped by that. So in terms of that actually has a massive impact on the championship standings. Our friend Oscar Piastri goes up to P1, which is very exciting. First time since I think Mark Webber that we've had in Australia leading the championship, which was very cool. Very, very, very nice to see. And strangely enough, Lando's down in third. Max in a McLaren sandwich.
No, he's not.
Norris is on 89 points. Max is on 87 points.
Yeah.
Did I get that wrong?
Yes.
Yeah. It's close.
Come on, Ma.
Damn it. I wanted a McLaren
You're
sandwich.
doing so well.
I do want to also point out George is still hanging in there on 73 points. So as far as I'm concerned, it is still a four-way possible fight for the championship. Russell is obviously an outside fourth option for the championship, but the fact that we're 5 races in now, and they're still all within spitting distance of each other, is good to see.
We could have a, three-way smash at the front. Russell wins a race, and suddenly Russell is second in the championship by 1 point.
Yeah.
In a McLaren sandwich.
In a McLaren sandwich, yeah, exactly.
It also pains me to say Alonso is still the only non-rookie to not score any points this season.
Dude got close.
It's just painful.
That Aston Martin is getting no love at all. Right?
No, I guarantee you they gave 0 shits about this year's car and just decided to throw Newey at next year's car in the hopes that Honda and Newey can do to them what they did to Red Bull.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. I think it'll be very exciting to see. I think Mercedes may have an edge on that one.
It'll be very exciting to see as long as Stroll isn't in that seat. But, personal opinion.
Let's wrap this up then. Let's wrap up the race. Any other key takeaways? Your favorite fun stats, Vince? You want to give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, it's only 2 that I picked up on that I'm a big fan of both. Lando and Piastri now have the same number of wins at 5 total wins, but Lando's been in the sport for, I think it's 7 years. I wrote that down, but I now can't remember if that's correct. And Piastri's only in his 3rd year. 30 Lando podiums to 14 Piastri podiums as well. Obviously, the McLaren hasn't always been the fastest car, so that does have something to do with Lando not having as many wins. But the fact that Piastri has already taken 5 wins off of Lando effectively, I think of it as, with the McLaren being so fast now, these are Lando's wins. He should be getting these with his experience, but he's not.
Yeah, I agree. I think these are all Lando's wins. He should be all over it. He should be so pissed off. He should be the one in the cool down room that's not really wanting to talk to anybody because he may say something that might get him fined in Rwanda or something like that.
The other stat is that Piastri is now equal 4th for the longest streak of race finishes. So he's finished 33 races consecutively, which puts him in the top 6 all-time consecutive finishes.
Dang.
Which I think is really interesting.
Really? Wow. Okay.
You compare that to things like Bottas isn't in the top 14, but he made every Q3 session while he was at McLaren. But he obviously then had enough DNFs regularly enough that he never got a long streak of race finishes.
Jeez. And Lando's not in there, I'm going to say.
I don't think he is either, no. Hamilton would be far and away out in front on 70, whereas the rest are on 40 and 30. But I think there was one race in 2020 that broke... Oh, no, it was in 2018, sorry, that broke his streak up into 2 parts. So both halves of that one streak are in the top 5 of consecutive finishes all time.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know.
Predictions?
Right. Yeah, let's wrap up on this and then go into predictions.
Next time, I'm going to come up with a points system for our predictions because I realized it's kind of hard to decide which one of us won. But I think James having Piastri, Russell, Verstappen was probably closest.
I mean, we could do the golf scoring for it. If you get it right, you get 1 point. If you're close, you get 2 points. If you missed, you get 3 points. And then whoever has the lowest score at the end of the year wins.
I like that, actually. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. So what would that give us? I go to my thingy here.
We'll tally it up later.
Yeah.
Tally it up later, indeed. We can
tally it up later.
More importantly, who do you guys like for Miami? What's going to be our finishing order?
I mean, Lando won last year, so I think I might actually go Lando, Piastri, Verstappen. No, I'm going to go Lando, Verstappen, Piastri. As much as I like my boy Piastri, I feel both Norris and Verstappen do really well around this track. We'll see how that goes.
Penny, a few thoughts?
Yeah. it's easy to just pick those guys and go with them again. There's not going to be many upgrades. Fresh off a break, Lando will be in a better headspace, so I will pick Lando, and I'm going to go Piastri and Hamilton. I think Hamilton's going to have a race.
A race
That he likes the US. He's generally also done pretty well. I'm putting Verstappen out just because. There's no good reason.
I'll be the different one this time. I'm going to put Verstappen, Piastri, and then Russell. I almost said Leclerc, but I want Russell to keep accumulating podiums.
Pole position, do we want to do P1s?
It's going to be Max.
I'm going to say Norris. Pioli.
I'm going to say Piastri, just for something different.
I'm going to say Leclerc.
Claire.
Just so he can continue the tradition of putting it on pole and then not winning.
I also, there is actually one interesting fact. It's not about this weekend. It's about an upcoming weekend that I found out this week. Apparently, we're going to get our first look at the C6 tyre in Imola. C6 is the new, soft that they have compound. So the C5 was
soft.
last year's. Yeah, and the C6 is the new softer compound. So I think the idea is to try and get a bit more pit stop action and tyre degradation around Imola because, as we all know, it is notoriously hard to overtake on that track outside of T1. So that should be a fun one as well. It's either going to go really well, completely boring, or be an absolute clusterfuck.
I think it has good odds to be a clusterfuck, so I'm looking forward to it based on that news.
I feel like I want to change my outcomes here, but we'll go with this. I'm going to stay the way I'm staying. Not changing anything. I've been really pondering my choices, but I know you guys moved on, so I'm staying.
When did you say that comes in? Imola?
Imola, yeah. Don't know when else they're going to be using it throughout the year, but that's what we're getting for
do they
Imola.
Do they give us the tyre charts earlier? How early do they give it to us, James?
You'd probably be able to find them, I would guess.
I imagine they'd be published up to the summer break, maybe.
That's 3 races away, right?
Is it? That quickly?
It is.
Damn.
I think so.
Kind of. We've got Spain. We've got Monaco and Spain doubleheader. Then Canada's 2 weeks after Spain, and then 2 weeks after that, we've got Austria.
It really isn't the summer break, is it?
No. Kind of 2 week gap is about standard. It's after Silverstone.
Pretty sure it's usually after
as well.
The 6th July to the 26th of July. That's Silverstone and Belgium.
Spa.
Yeah. And then Hungary, you've got 3rd of August, and then 31st of August is
basically a full month, full 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's Netherlands. So the Dutch GP.
Yeah, that's the summer break. It's usually Hungary to what's it called? Zandvoort.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be a spicy race this year.
It will be. It'll be a good race.
Well, it'd be a good quali session at least.
Okay, so I got that wrong. So about 6 races away. 8 races away. Something like that. And then I'll get quiet.
That's still quite a fair way away, I swear.
I thought it was sooner. I thought there was... The gaps are kind of inconsistent this year. Feels that way anyways. Anyways. All right. On that note, this has been another episode of the Paddock Party podcast. This is Mark signing us off. Thank you to James and Vince, who have done a wonderful job on keeping us honest and mostly on time. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
I'm just stopping.